My grandparents, Larry and Shirley Gamble, were married on November 4th, 1956. That's 57 years ago. And so this weekend I sat down with them and asked them to tell me their story, how they met, how they got engaged, about their wedding, their life together, and some of the events since then. So this is their story.
I'm Shirley.
I'm Larry.
Okay,
Oh.
how long have you two been married?
57 years.
57 years. All right, so what day were you married?
On a Sunday, November the 4th, 1956.
All right. How old were you two when you first met?
In high school.
I was 17. How old were you? No, I guess I was 16.
18, I guess. I don't remember.
No, we met when he was a senior and I was a junior. And we met in May. And I wouldn't turn 17 till the fall, so I was 16. Okay.
And how did you guys meet?
A blind
Blind
date.
date.
Because I sang in the girls' ensemble, and the girl that sat next to me was the girl that he asked to the junior-senior prom. But she already had a date. And so she said she would get him a date, and he wanted somebody with long hair. I had long hair. So she twisted my arm, and I said I would go. But I thought, this is not something I want to do, because Larry Gamble is always being yelled at by the choir director. And he told me later it's because she knew his name and didn't know all the other people's names.
She knew my name?
Yes, a choir of 100 people. And so he was always being yelled at in the bass section. So I thought, do I really want to go out with him or not? But we were going to the junior-senior prom.
Yeah, you couldn't go stag back then.
No.
Had to have a date, and it had to be from the school.
And so she got us together, after school. I had to meet you in your car, and we went downtown to the little restaurant next to the Regent Theater and had a Coke or something and discussed the time he was picking me up and what color flower I was going to have. And he said he was bringing red, and I said, no, I have a blue dress. You need to bring white. And he said, no, he was going to bring red. And I said, oh dear. And so when he came, he had pink. So now, why don't you say something?
I don't need to say anything. You said it all.
Do you remember your first impression when you met Grandma the first time?
Well, I met her in choir.
I don't think he liked me.
I didn't say I didn't like you.
Oh, okay.
All right, so how did the dance go?
Not well.
No, not well?
Not well at all.
She didn't know how to dance.
And he did. Because your great-grandmother had sent him to take ballroom dancing lessons, so he knew how to dance. And then I had very slippery shoes, and I slipped and fell. I think that ruined his...
I don't remember that.
Oh, I do. And so then we went to Dayton to Longo's Spaghetti House afterwards. And he informed me that I was getting a plate of spaghetti and we couldn't leave there until I had eaten all of it. That's true.
If you say so.
Yes, because you said if you spent the money for a meal for each one of us, we were going to eat all of it. Okay? And what car did you have? Your dad's car.
My dad's car.
Yeah, and tell him what your car was, what it was. What was it?
I don't remember which one I think he had a 1950 Plymouth.
4-door?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dad didn't like 2 doors. I don't either.
Yes. Got home. I decided I would probably never see him again. No, we didn't go out anymore then. graduation, I sang in the choir, and it was at Memorial Hall, and so I got to go to graduation because and I saw him graduate. And then you were going into the Navy,
Yep.
what, right after that?
4 days
and,
after.
And 4 days after graduation. So lo and behold, my cousin Don said he was coming out to see us, and he was bringing somebody to see us. And
I worked with him at Albert's
And-
supermarket.
he brought Grandpa out to the house to see us. And I'm going, oh my goodness. And you played the piano,
Yeah, Don was already in the
Navy.
Navy. He had quit school and joined the Navy.
And he brought Grandpa out to our house. And Grandpa played the piano. We even have a picture of him sitting on the piano bench playing the piano. And I thought, well, then he wasn't half bad if he could play the piano. And so then we spent the next day together at Kaiser Lake. Don and somebody, no, one of your friends, Larry Williams and his now wife, Ginger, and you and I went to Kaiser Lake for the day, picnicking and swimming and whatever. And then you left and you asked me if I'd write you, didn't you?
I might, if you say so.
Well, I said I'd write you.
My memory's not that good.
You left for the Navy, right?
Right, he left to go to Waukegan, Illinois, Great Lakes
Illinois.
Training Center, and he started called every week, and we sent letters back and forth. I was working at the shoe store at the time, and then, you were there 12 weeks?
10.
Okay, 10 weeks. And then his mom and dad were going up for graduation. He worked it out that I would go with his mom and dad. I had not met his mom and dad yet. And so he worked it out that my mom and dad and I went to his mom and dad's house on Burnett Road, and we met the family. And then my mom and dad let me go with them up to Great Lakes Naval Training Center up north of Chicago. We have pictures from when we went up there for his graduation from boot camp. And now he didn't come back home with us. You came home later. And then I was back in school for my senior year. So he picked me up every day and we'd go, hey, what you doing, babe? And we'd go and get at Frisch's, well, it was Big Boy then, and get a sandwich and just hang out. And so he came.
So, Grandpa, would you say at first you had a bigger thing for her than she did for you?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I liked him, but after that, but you don't know, you know.
Okay.
And so,
I had another girlfriend,
yes, and her name was Bubbles.
but that was her nickname.
That was her nickname. She lived in Columbus. And I guess
Dolores didn't either.
she was staying with somebody in Columbus, she said.
Might have, I don't know.
Because you had to go to Columbus the day before we went up to Kaiser Lake and break up with her. You came, you were stationed in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania then.
Yeah.
And you went on to Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, and he hitchhiked home a couple of weekends. And I think it was about the first, well, it was before Christmas. He came home for the weekend, and I was working at the shoe store, and Kathleen, it's now Kathleen Massey, but she worked there too, and she wanted to go up to Hart's Jewelry Store to buy her boyfriend something for Christmas. Well, he is her fiance. And she wanted to go there to buy him something for Christmas, and I said, okay, I guess we can walk all the way up there. And so we walked in the door, And I said, Kathleen, I can't go in here. And she said, why? I said, there's Larry and his grandmother. And they're looking at diamond rings. Just then your grandmother turned around and she said, well, here's the girl now that it's for. And so had me come sit down. I didn't get back to work after lunch because I was there the rest of the time. We looked at diamond rings, and this is the one you bought. We didn't buy, you bought. So at the time, it looked like it was 5 times as big as it is now. And I wandered back to work then late. And then you and your grandmother, you told me you had her come with you to pick it out because she knew good diamonds.
She had a bunch of them.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Grandma Broadbeck.
So did he give you the ring that day?
No, I didn't know whether I was going to get it or not.
Hadn't bought it yet.
And so he put it in layaway. I think that's what you did, didn't you?
I think so.
And so I didn't get it till Christmas Eve, which was maybe 2 months later. And it was on Christmas Eve. We were in the car outside the house, my mom and dad's house, when you gave it to me.
I don't even know whether I had a car then or not.
I don't know what car we were in.
Did you ask her father for permission at all before
Nope.
this? No.
Nope.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so
No, my father would have probably said no.
okay, so he gives you the ring
He
Christmas
did
Eve.
say no.
Oh, well, yeah, he did at the wedding time. He said no. But he wasn't even going to go to the wedding. But that was a whole year later. But
So he gives you the ring on Christmas Eve. Then what happens? Who do you tell? All that kind of
I
stuff.
went in and told my mom. That was about next day. Whatever, did we come out here to the farm to your grandma and grandpa's or something? I don't know. But you had probably hitchhiked home and had to go back. Maybe you'd gotten leave, I don't know, since it was Christmas. But
Yeah, I did get leave for Christmas.
yeah, so that's
The
why.
next year I didn't get leave.
Yeah, after we got married, he didn't have leave for Christmas. And so I continued going to school, and we kept riding back and forth. And so we were planning.
So her dad wouldn't have anything to do with it, so
Mm.
we waited till she turned 18.
So did her dad not like you, or was it just because he thought you guys were too young? Or maybe
It's
a little
just
bit of
because
both?
he didn't.
Probably both.
Probably both, and probably because he wanted me to go to college and become a teacher. And I said, are you going to help me with funds to go to college? No, you got to figure that out for yourself and work. I said, well, I don't want to be a teacher. So he had hitchhiked back and forth quite a bit of time. And one time, Bob brought you home. Bob, and they live in Texas. We still correspond at Christmas. But anyway, he just hitchhiked back and forth. And in these days, you wouldn't do that, you know. And he took a chance of getting back in time so he wouldn't,
PA wall.
yeah, be AWOL. When you came home on that Friday, your mom and dad picked you up in Yellow Springs, and I was with them. And then we picked up my mom, and evidently you had hitchhiked. You had probably
What was
hitchhiked
this? What are you talking about?
just before we got married. 2 days before
I
we got
wasn't at
married.
Willow Grove.
Yes, you were.
No, it was Little Creek.
Oh, out at
Little Creek, Virginia.
and that's at what is it? What's the beach? Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach.
Oh, wasn't at Virginia Beach then.
Yeah. Well,
That
anyway,
was
when
later.
you came home, and when we got married, then when he came home, let's see, we got married on Sunday, the 4th. It was my birthday, the 2nd. It was Friday. His mom and dad, and my mom and I, and they had picked him up in Yellow Springs, and when we went downtown to the courthouse, and my mom signed. See, we had to have our parents sign for us because we were underage. So your mom and dad signed
I
for
wasn't.
you. You were 18, but they signed for you.
No, I didn't.
And my mom signed for me. My dad didn't go and he wouldn't go. And so 2 days later we got married. But the pastor about a week before, Dr. Drummel, because he wasn't even going to the wedding, my dad. And Dr. Drummel, he would do anything for Dr. Drummel. And Mother and I knew what he was saying to him on the phone. We were in the same room. And Dr. Drummel asked him if he would do something for him. And my dad said, well, you know I will. Of course I'll do something for you. And he said, what do you want me to do? And he said, I want you to walk your daughter down the aisle on Sunday. And he said, yes. But that was it, wasn't it? Did he come to the reception? I don't know. It was in the basement of the church that we still go to. It
You got
was,
any pictures?
yes, we do. Yeah, he was there. He had pictures taken with us. Anyway, that was the first reception held in the Christian Education Building. It was the new building. And the minister's wife tried to talk me into getting married later so they'd have drapes up at the windows in the fellowship hall. And I said, no, we're not waiting any longer, and we're doing it now. Somehow or other, they got the drapes up at the windows before the reception. And I had like 5 friends of mine, girls, that did the cake and stuff like that. Carol Garwood was my maid of honor, and your brother Kenny was your best man. And I have to realize he was 5 years younger than Larry, so Larry was 19, and that made him 14. And the thing that your mom and dad gave you for a wedding present was your new suit.
Yeah.
They got you a new suit. And
that you wore in the wedding?
uh-huh. And then let's see, I remember, oh, well, my dad, Mother and I were scraping together to do all the, the things for the wedding, like get the cake, and I had my graduation dress made, particularly so that I could wear it to be married. It's in the cedar chest in the other room. It's eyelet, and I had a seamstress made that for me. And so I had the dress, and we were having to pull all of our money together. Mother was working, and I worked part-time just to be able to get the stuff to have the reception. And after he told Dr. Drummel that he'd walk me down the aisle, he wanted to know what we had planned and if he should, if we needed any more money, he would give us some more money for the stuff that we needed to have done. So he went along with it from then on, but he was not going to sign for me. And that was my birthday. I turned 18 when we went to court and had it signed. And usually had to have a waiting period. And but because he was in the service, that was waived. And we both had to get blood tests, didn't we? We had to go and get blood tests.
I don't remember.
And so we had those papers too when we went to sign. And then we got married at 2, started at 2 in the afternoon at church, and our organist for many, many years wasn't our organist yet, but she, Helen Roberts, played the organ for us. Oh, the church was packed, and you had side aisles because it was the old church. And all the people from, because we had a lot of members at the church then, so all the people at the church came. So then after the reception, we left, and you and I headed down to Norfolk, but we stopped in, was it Greenville? Where did,
somewhere down there.
huh?
Somewhere down there, I don't remember the town.
Johnny Williams, a friend of ours, who was candidating at a church there, and we stopped for the 6 o'clock service or whatever it was, and then he preached, and then he had to go outside, and they were going to vote on him.
Was that Sunday night?
That was Sunday after the wedding.
So you
Yeah.
left as soon as the wedding was over?
No, after the reception.
Okay.
And this was about 6:30 in the evening, and so we stopped and attended his service, and he introduced us, and he preached, and then he had to go outside while they voted, and we went outside with him. And when they called him back in, well, we went on, I think. We knew he was going to be their pastor, but they said that if a young couple on their wedding day thought enough of him to stop and attend his service, that they felt he was a minister they wanted to have. And so then we went on and we stayed in Gallipolis, Ohio. They murdered that on TV. And then we went on the next day on down to Norfolk so I could get an ID card. And then we went up to Philadelphia.
Spent a couple days up there.
Yeah, with his aunt and Aunt Marge and Uncle Bill and Aunt Betty, but I remember being at Aunt Marge and Uncle Bill and having Vicky sitting on my lap. We have pictures of that.
So that was like your honeymoon then? Was going to
Yeah,
Philadelphia?
that was going to Norfolk, and then because
I only had a week.
I had never been very far away from home, so that was, and we didn't have interstates in those days, so going through the mountains was really pretty. And it was in the fall in November, and it was really nice. And we then came home from Philadelphia. And then he left and went back down there, and I stayed and went to work at Sears for Christmas in the catalog department, and I hated it. And I told him I was leaving. I was going to quit because I just did not like that job. I didn't like people yelling at me and swearing at me and all kinds of things because their packages weren't there. And so they said no, they didn't want me to quit. And so they transferred me to the toy department. I worked in the toy department and the Christmas ornaments and all that, so that was fun. And then you came after Christmas. You weren't home for Christmas. You came for New Year's. But I didn't go back with you then. You came back the middle of January,
yeah.
and then I went back to Virginia Beach. And we lived, about 2 blocks off the beach. Never been to any place so cold in my life. You know, with the cold snow and stuff blowing off the ocean. Oh, wind off the ocean and spray, because you'd even get spray that far. And we lived upstairs above a family, and he was a gambler. That was his line of work. He was a gambler down on the boardwalks and, around Virginia Beach. And there wasn't much going on in Virginia Beach. All the hotels were closed. There weren't that many hotels at that time.
Not then.
And then I had a miscarriage. I was in the Virginia Beach, Virginia hospital, which was a little tiny 2-story hospital. And they did surgery and babies and everything all on the same floor that you had patients sleeping on. So every time somebody had surgery, you could smell the ether in your room. And they said I hadn't lost it. My mom and dad flew down, and then you were being sent to Charleston.
Mm-mm.
Yes, you were.
Before Charleston.
You were being
yeah.
you were being sent down there. So you and my dad brought all of our stuff home while my mom and I stayed there until they said I could travel. And I flew back with my mom on my dad's ticket. And you and my dad drove home and bringing the stuff home, and you came back. and scared my dad to death is what happened. I don't think we ever got done listening to that story about my dad, how scared he was in the mountains with him driving. And so, a couple of the times you came back before we got married, one time was to Cleveland, and your dad took my dad and me up to Cleveland to the teenage rodeo. Your grandpa used to enter it was a driving competition, and you came home one weekend, and we went out to watch him, and the man said, well, aren't you going to enter? And so he said, well, I'm on leave from the Navy, and he said, that's all right.
I'm on leave.
Oh, well, you were home for the weekend, and so he said, well, that doesn't make any difference, and he entered and he won. And so then he had to go to Cleveland for the
State.
yeah. And you came in, what, about 24th out of all the counties? And
I wasn't that far down.
you weren't? I don't remember. I thought it was 24, but maybe not. Anyway, my dad and I and his dad drove up there for that, and then he came back with us. And you got to realize he was hitchhiking and not getting any sleep, and he was still doing this in the daytime. And so, but he really enjoyed those. We've got trophies somewhere around this house of his teenage rodeo days. So, now, what do you remember?
Just about the same thing. What do you mean, what do I remember?
Well, you went to Charleston. What?
Yeah. But I had to come up and get you.
Yeah, but I couldn't go for a while. Well, you
didn't have any place for you to stay.
yeah, you got an apartment. I think I went down there in June. You came and got me in June, because I came home in April, the 1st of April, and went to my doctor here, and she said I had lost it. She said the baby. So then I went down
pregnant.
in June, and we had Tim the next April, and I found the house when we were down there a few years ago. He couldn't find it, but I found the house, and we had an apartment upstairs, and yes, we did.
Well, that one, yeah, but you
Then we moved
'cause you
over,
couldn't do
climbed the
stairs
steps. We moved
out on James Island.
right on Welsh Avenue, and I just love the South with all their roaches and horrible bugs and everything else. No, I didn't. And so we lived there until the Tottens, was that their name? And they had bought the new trailer, and they were going to lose it because he was being transferred someplace else. So we made the back payments and got and we moved into the trailer. And so when you think it was an 8-foot wide and 42-foot long, and that was the longest they had in those days. But they had taken the furniture out of the back bedroom and put a crib in there for their little boy. And so we just put Tim's crib in there, and we had the 3/4 of a bed that was built in the hallway, but that's where we lived in Charleston after that. And let's see, you were over in North Charleston, weren't you? No.
We did the new base. That was in North Charleston. The other one was down at the old yacht club.
Yeah, and I remember when the hurricane was coming, and
We were down there at the
you
time.
guys had to stay on base because to keep things from floating away. And she was working at one of the restaurants, and I was taking care of their baby too. And she finally told him she was leaving because she had to drive through a lot of trees to get to our house on James Island. And they kept telling us to fill up the bathtubs with water and fill up the pans with water in case your electricity went off. And if you didn't have a garage, they said park your car parallel to the house. And I had done all that, and except we didn't have a bathtub. We only had a shower, so we couldn't fill up the bathtub with water. And so they kept giving us all these instructions as to what we were to do when the electricity went off, because we had a pump and well where we lived. And it came within like 70 miles off the coast of Charleston and turned and went north and hit Myrtle Beach. We drove up after that to see. I remember he went with us, Totten. I can't remember his first name. I think her name was Carolyn. But anyway, we drove up, and it was, of course, that was long before all the hotels and stuff like that were in Myrtle Beach.
A lot of changes.
Oh, a lot of changes since then. That was just like a small town with a few hotels on the beach, you know. So, and then you mustered out, or whatever you call it, after your 4 years.
Yep.
And we came home, and because I was homesick, he wanted to stay. And Tim was a baby. And, well, he was, let's see, we came back here in 58. Yeah. He was a baby. And then,
59.
59, okay, well, he's still a baby because Kim was born in 60
Yeah,
at Community Hospital.
You were pregnant.
I didn't get pregnant until we got back here. I remember being out here in May, and your Aunt Marge was here, and she had just found out she was pregnant with Billy, your Aunt Marge. And I told her, I said, I think I'm pregnant too. Well, after they went back, and then I found out I was expecting your mom. And so Billy was born in March, and she was born in May, so it was a year later, but still.
So a couple years ago, you had your 50th wedding anniversary. What did you guys do to celebrate that? Tell me about that.
We had our reunion, or we had a renewal of our vows at church. And
The same church where you got married.
yes, and well, it's a new church now instead of the old church. And you, Nathan, performed the ceremony, and Tim's girls came up. He didn't get here for the renewal service. And your mom and dad and people from the church. We had about 60 some people there, and we had a reception in the basement, and real nice. Yes, we had that, and we had Gretchen and Mariah and Karen and Kayla. As Kayla did the guest book, and Gretchen, I believe, was the maid of honor, and the other two girls, Karen and Mariah, were bridesmaids, I guess you would say. And I just come across some of those pictures the other day.
Okay, so Grandpa, if you give a piece of advice, one piece of advice to young couples out there that hope to be married for 57 years someday, what would be the advice that you would give them?
Don't want to give many advice.
Why?
Each couple's different.
Obviously, being married for 57 years, you guys have done something right. So, what is the key to a long and successful marriage?
The boss.
It is?
Don't listen to the boss.
Oh, you do? Okay. Oh, you do? Do you? Mm-hmm.
Most of the time.
We've had our arguments. We've had our times when after we come back to Ohio, we brought the mobile home back, and I remember one time, and I was pregnant with your mom, and we had a big argument, and you left, and I was scared to death he was gone for good, and come back the next day, and I said, well, where were you? He said, I was sleeping in the car outside all night. So yes, we've had our arguments and disagreements, and have more when you're younger than you do when you get older. Many times we could have gotten divorced
Sure.
at arguments, but then you make up and go again, till the next time you get mad at each other. And so
So is one of the keys then to put things in perspective, right? To remember that this commitment you've made is greater than these arguments that you have, and to just...
right, because in our day and age, you just didn't get divorced unless it just wasn't thought of.
Nowadays they don't get married.
I mean, in those days, unless you were being abused or something like that, you didn't get divorced. That was a no-no. You got married, that was for life. My mom said her dad told her when she got married that she made her bed and you lie in it and you don't come back home. That's heavy. Okay. There it is.
Okay. Well, let's take it out of the bag and look at it.
Yeah. I can't tell it well. There's a material from my dress. You want a piece of the material? I mean, you can cut off a piece of material, and you can have the whole piece. There's more. And here's my shoes I wore. On that night. They're kind of dirty now, but had the heels were crystal, and those were the shoes I wore 57 years ago. My gosh. And that was the pattern for my dress. Okay, is there anything else you want out of here?
So let's take the dress out of the bag. Let's see it.
Okay, you can see if there's anything else. I thought maybe my veil was there. I think it's on here. Yeah, it is. Your great-grandma Gamble, mother and I and she went over to Columbus, to Lazarus, and she got the material, your great-grandma Gamble, and she got this and got the net, and she made my veil for me. And I would never get into this today. That was a dress. Wasn't near this long then.